direct marketing kind of sucks, especially from a podcast. You guys always make it complicated. The long term, there's lots of things that can happen. I'm worried about like what's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months.
Evan,
how we doing, guys?
Happening? How you living, Evan?
Things are good. Things are good. There it is. There's the new branding. Look at that behind you.
Next level you.
We're planting the flag, Evan. We got to do it.
Let's go. All right. We have to figure out your business model. Which was the when we had our first call 2 times ago. I guess it's about a month ago. I gave you 2 pieces of homework. What happened to Kevin?
He got the business model. He went and got the business model.
Okay. Jesus Christ, you guys always make it complicated. Okay. So it was rebrand, which we've done now, great. And then also figure out the business model, because there was the podcast coaching, right? Yeah. And then figuring out the other side where Kevin was supposed to pitch Dave Meltzer. I don't know if that happened or not on the
I was supposed to.
Oh, Alan was supposed to pitch Dave Meltzer. And
so
did that happen?
I got a new client this week for a higher price point with what I was doing. So I pivoted the coaching based on that conversation, but my target is still within our business model. So it's listeners for a higher price point than I was already charging. So I'm doing $250 per call, weekly coaching. Do you want us to go through our business model?
So you've got your calls. So you're going to be doing the long term. There's lots of things that can happen. I'm worried about like what's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. Business model.
If everything goes the way we see it, we're going to be doing $20K monthly income in the next 3 to 6 months. That's what we're pushing for.
And how are you breaking that down?
10K each.
So for me, that would be 10 full-time clients, 1 call per week, $250 per call. That equates to 10K. And for him, he has, how many clients is it for you?
So it would be 8 clients for me, because my price point is $1,500 a month. So 8 clients would get me there. And I have 5 right now at $1,500 a month.
Great. And Alan, you just got your first one, or how are we doing on your side?
I already have existing clients, 6 still left at the old price point of $100 a week. So 6. That's $600 a week times 4 is what? 2,400 plus the 500 a week. So that's an additional 1,000. So 3,400.
And that's on the team building stuff, or that's what are you helping them with?
My existing peak performance coaching. It's business consulting, basically helping them dial in their business, helping them with what you're helping us with, but also their own habits and their own peak performance. And I have my own sort of tracking system, as I told you about in Google spreadsheets.
Ah, okay. So it's not the managing remote teams. It's high performance coaching.
No, exactly. Yep.
We're trying to figure out how to dial in, because in an ideal world, I think what would happen is someone like Evan Carmichael would come to us, or we connect with you and say, Evan, have you ever thought of starting a podcast to help grow your business? I do the podcast side. We take care of everything. Alan helps you manage your team and make sure the numbers are right. The problem is the price on that is going to be double what it's going to be, like $3,000 or $4,000 a month. So it's finding the people and having enough credibility, right? And finding the right people is kind of the goal now at this point.
Yeah, your fastest path is doing the podcasts, charging way more for it, and helping them with the monetization of it as well.
Yeah.
So how are people making money from their podcast? Like the people who you're working with, how do they monetize it? Are you helping set them up with ads or what?
Yeah. Well, so no, right now most of them do one-on-one coaching. So I'm sharing with them what we do to get our clients, and we've been doing for the last few years. Some of them have sponsorships, and then some of them have products to sell as well.
Is there enough of a model with ads though, or no?
It's not my area of expertise. So I would have to learn way more, but I'm not against doing it.
What was the question?
Ads.
Is there enough money from an ad model? I know there's a couple of companies. I was talking to James Altucher about it. I forget. I mean, I'm not in the podcasting world, but there are a couple of services you can connect into that's basically like the Google Ads for podcasting.
Yeah, right.
where if you can help somebody get up and off the ground with their podcast, but the technology alone is not enough. You have to create a business model for them. If they're making money from it, that's fantastic, right? And all they have to do is show up and do an episode.
Yeah.
You should definitely know the options for monetizing a podcast and what advertising platforms are out there that make it super easy. Like if I'm going to come in, if you said, hey, Evan, come do a podcast with us, we'll manage the whole thing. We're going to run ads against it. You don't have to do anything else. If you sell books or sell anything else on top of it, bonus. But just from the ads alone, you're going to be making X per month.
Right.
And it's going to cost Y per month. That makes it a super dead simple. So like setting up the podcast is fine. Optimizing each episode. But then how do I get views on my podcast or downloads on my podcast? And how do I make money from my podcast is the entire business. That's what you have to be a master at to blow this thing up.
Right.
Because the gear and all that other stuff doesn't really matter that much.
Evan, if you were going to start a podcast and hire us, what would you want to know? What certainty would you need to hire us for something like $4K a month? Like, what would you need to know if that was in your initiative?
I think that's a much better price point. I want you to be at $4K a month, not 1.5. And that's totally feasible if you're bringing that in. So ideally, if you're doing it with me, you're taking my existing stuff where I don't have to do anything new.
Yeah.
You're taking my IG lives, videos on YouTube, coaching I'm already doing, and you're turning those into episodes. I don't know which ones would do best. I could be a part of the brainstorming conversation, but you want it to be more hands off to say, hey, like Evan, we'll take this. We'll pay attention to the data. We'll pay attention to the metrics. We'll tell you what's working. And when you're already tapping into somebody who's creating content existing, it's so much easier than to ask them to do something brand new.
Right.
Because the talent's time is always going to be the number one thing. I mean, same thing for YouTube. Asking Tony Robbins to go make more videos is the number one problem for Tony Robbins' channel, right? So they're already making content. You're going to now turn it into a podcast. Then it becomes about how do you get downloads on it? What do I need to do on my end? But what can you do from your side to get downloads on it, right? I don't know if there's optimization or partnerships with other podcasters or whatever, just try to get, like if you were to come to me and start a YouTube channel, I tell you, here's what you need to do to get your YouTube channel more exposure. And then I'd want to know, how do we make money from it?
So Evan, the podcast would increase the revenue from your existing streams if we did it right, because you can advertise your stuff on your own show by saying, hey, just so you know, I have this book Built to Serve. So we would have to talk to you and figure out where you're already making most of your money and then create the podcast as an existing channel to feed that.
That's where you have to understand the ad market a little better to see where, because the more hands-off you can make it, the better. So, looking at Jeremy, right, who went from what he was, grocery store clerk to 6 figures in a year, he can justify his expense plus just off of the advertising. Like he's taking some clients that come in and some clients were like $2,000-$3,000 a month in advertising. And now they're like $8,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month in advertising revenue. So he justifies his expense, right? And he started off at $500 a month just to do consulting. And now he's doing more hands-on work. So I think his biggest is $5K a month. But it's all totally like, hey, I'm making more than $5K just by having you do what you're doing.
Right.
Plus, I get to sell my books. Plus, I get to sell my speaking. Plus, I get to have the vanity metrics of having X number of subscribers on my show. That makes it a no-brainer. That makes it super easy for people to say yes to. At least to give you a shot on.
It's basically it's a free, you don't have to do anything lead gen. Basically, it just leads straight to monetization.
Yeah, even if you're running it even if you run the podcast at break even, I think that's a model for people.
Okay. Right.
But from the ads, right? It doesn't require me to do anything else. Because now if I'm going to sell my book, now I gotta track how many book sales came from the podcast. It's also not great for you guys because it's hard. Direct marketing kind of sucks, especially from a podcast, because people are listening in their car and they're going to remember some link when they get to the office, or they get to wherever they're going, and when they finish washing their dishes. Like, the conversions from a podcast are the hardest to measure, because there's no, like, you can't click on something. You have to go to the show notes.
Yeah.
And so you have to remember to go to the show notes afterward. So you're losing out on a lot of opportunity, because if anybody only looks at the metrics, they're going to say, this isn't working. This is a big waste of time.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. And the time and that's the thing I always say to my clients, like, and maybe this is wrong, I always say, like, you'll make money, but it's going to take a little bit for you to build up your listenership. You have to build up, people that like you, know you, they trust you. That's one of the beautiful things. Like, we have people that listen to us for hundreds of hours. They like us, they know us, they trust us, just like you. But that's good. I have to do better with that. I like to learn more.
I like the way you said, justify the expense. It's an existing business that the podcast is now a part of their business and a part of their marketing strategy. And we just need to show them how, worst case scenario, you're still making your money back and then some within, 10 episodes or whatever, based on our predictions.
Yeah, like, if I'm making $5K a month in ads, I'll pay you guys $5K a month to do it, to run the show, because everything else is great on top of it. Right? Is lead gen, is brand building, is, all of that stuff. Great. That's all great on top of it. But I'm breaking even on my podcast just from the ads. Now, what does it take? Is the ad markets as developed? How long does it take to get to $5K a month in ads? What's our estimation that maybe you guys ramp up to, that starts off at 1,500 and then goes to 5K or something. But that's where I want you to play. Like, I want you playing in the 5 to 10K a month range, managing these podcasts. And that limits the number of people who will play with you. It's not your audience, right? It's not some startup podcast. You're targeting people who already have a great show, have great content, that just haven't done it on a podcast, or you're taking over somebody's existing podcast because they've just given it to somebody on their team, and that person's managing all of their social media and podcasts and newsletter and marketing. It's like, and they don't know anything about podcasts. They're just throwing it together, right? That happens.
Right.
So that's where you guys are the ninjas that come in and be able to do that. And if you get 5 to 10 people paying you 5 to 10K to run their podcast, like, that funds everything that is on that complicated business plan in front of you. Like, that's what you need to do. And then how do you do lead gen to get those guys? You bring them as guests on your show.
Right. I was just going to ask you about lead gen, but they're guests on our show, so we just need to do that targeting better. But also,
you guys have a great show. You guys ask great questions. You do your prep. It's you may not have like the giant numbers, but they'll have a great time. Like, I mean, I haven't gone, and my only experience with you guys is my episodes on your show. But I'd be shocked if anybody came out of your interview saying those guys suck. Like, you're going to give them a good experience, right? I just believe that. You could prove me wrong with some of your old episodes, maybe, but I think you're going to give a good experience to people. So in there, then there's a conversation. Like, okay, so yesterday I had a guy, Peter Taunton, on my IG Live. I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but super successful entrepreneur, health and fitness, made millions and millions of dollars.
Oh, Peter Taunton. Yeah, he's a buddy of ours. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, but has he been on your show?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So that's the pitch. It's like, hey, you need a podcast.
Oh, I've done it several times. Several.
So what's the holdup?
He said he doesn't want to start one.
Well, why?
I don't know. That's a good question. I can reach back out.
Maybe because he doesn't think he has the time, but maybe we haven't made it clear enough that it would only take you an hour a week to do the episode. We'll do everything else. Or
you rip the audio from other videos that he's done. Right? Like, I closed with talking about YouTube. Like, dude, you would crush it on YouTube. Because we did a Q&A session where we had a blast and we answered for 25 minutes questions from my audience through an Instagram Live like this, right? Just next question. And a guy like that can answer anything, right? Yeah. And we were talking about emotions. We're talking, like, a lot of times when I have somebody come on, they're like, only ask me questions in this narrow band because I don't have depth of knowledge, which is fine. But for him, it's like, great. Whatever you want to throw at me, throw at me. Perfect. That's an episode. And then at the end, we talked about YouTube. And then he follows up and says, hey, I want to do more. What do I do on YouTube? Can you send me the questions that people ask me here on this show? If I wanted to, like, if I was you guys, if that was my business and I'm trying to help people build their YouTube channels, like I would push him to Jeremy, but Jeremy is now like, he's full up. He's got to hire 2 more people just to handle the work. So he's not doing new people right now. But that should be you guys. That 25-minute episode we did with him should be a podcast.
Right.
So he's not seeing, like, these are the people who you need to be, like, $4K a month for Peter is not a lot of money.
Right. Yeah.
For most of your audience, for most of my audience, that's crazy.
Right.
They're not dropping $4K a month on a podcast.
Right.
So this is like the branching out where you're targeting super elite people and helping them build their brand and their audience, and you're getting paid for it. And then the other side is mostly free to figure out what is the, like, is it going to be ad revenue from YouTube? Is it going to be membership that you're going to start driving? Because most people won't be able to pay. Like, it's going to be easier for Kevin to get 5 to 10 clients paying 5 to 10K than it's going to be for Alan to get high performance coaching from your current audience. Not because of a skill set difference, just because of the people you're talking to.
Interesting. That's fire, Evan. This is exactly what we needed.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we needed. Okay, so lead gen, get them on the show. Oh, what about a ramp up? You mentioned a ramp up. So Kevin had a suggestion of, like, is there any value, maybe not with a Peter Taunton, because I don't think money is the bottleneck, but is there any value to, like, we are so certain that you would crush it on a podcast that we'll give you a lower price point for the first month just to prove our services? And then once they get in that habit, is there any value to that type of thing? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it could be. You want to make sure that you're, when you're giving something away for free to prove yourself, I'm a big fan of that. But you want to just make sure you're dealing with ideal clients, because you can give a lot of stuff away for free to non-ideal clients who then, hey, thank you for the free work. And then they not that they intentionally, like, want to screw you over. It just becomes a waste of everybody's time. Right. This is why I asked you back in episode 1 to figure out your business model, because in the short term, all the work that Kevin's doing is what funds the business. But in the long term, you don't want to be in the podcast building business for other people. Like, you're trying to build Next Level University. So all the work that Alan would then subsequently do to create the content, to make the connections, to start building the Next Level U brand as consumer facing, not just for these high level people you're dealing with. That's ultimately where you want to go. So, Kevin's bringing in all the money in the short term scenario, but Alan's building the long term brand of what you're trying to create. So that's why you got to figure out the joint partnership, because having Kevin do one thing and Alan do one thing, you kind of keep that money separate, and then it just the math doesn't work out, right?
I like how you deduced all of that, because that's what we've been doing, Evan. Like, literally, that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's not only Kevin is only doing this and only, of course, right? But recognizing that, hey, in the short term, it's like a married couple. If somebody wants to be an entrepreneur and the other one goes and gets a job, like, the one who gets a job supports the person who's starting the business. This is kind of what it is, right? It's like, hey, we have this high level service that we can charge some money for. We need to get better at it, right? And we need to have estimations and know how to market a podcast well and know how to monetize it well and have good numbers for people. But it's ultimately not where we want to go. Like, these are great relationships to have, but Next Level U is not, we'll teach you how to have a podcast for, high level people. You want to spread information to the world, but that brand building process takes time and needs a runway, which is what the podcasting thing helps you create. So it's a short-term business model that feeds the long-term business model. So, like, I don't know what, Dave Meltzer, does Dave have a podcast?
Yeah. It's called The Playbook.
Right. So, like, how can you make his podcast better?
Right.
But that's
more impact, more money. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I could go in and make Dave's YouTube channel better. And with respect to his team, I could make his YouTube channel better. It's not going in and saying, hey, your whole team sucked. Right. Most people are doing, like most, but it's the Dave Meltzers of the world, it's the Evan Carmichael. That's who you want to be working with.
Right.
So there's the convincing them to do a podcast, or there's the making their current podcast have more impact and make more money for them. And you have to be a ninja at both of those.
Right.
Because if you can go into Dave and say, hey, let me pull this off of your team, because they're doing a million things. This is what we specialize in, and we'll help you get more impact and more money from your show. You want that to be an easy yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Evan, so I know we only got like a minute or two here. What would advice be for us who have never run a single paid ad ever for podcast growth?
Oh, I don't know enough about podcast growth, right? Like that's, this is what you have to model success. Like I'd be looking at who's done it.
Yeah.
Paid ads, I think you have to, I don't think paid ads has to be the answer. Like I think you have to hack it a little bit more. Because to say, hey, we'll make this a $5,000 a month thing for you, but you have to put $50,000 of ads into it.
Right.
That makes the equation harder. So whether it's shout outs on other people's shows, whether it's you booking them as guests on other people's podcasts, whether it's
We do
creating
that. We do that also.
Right. But it's like you need the 10-point plan for how to grow a podcast. We need you to send 4 emails out to your newsletter talking about your first episodes. We need you to put it in the link of your Instagram bio. We need you to, like, whatever these things are.
Right.
And really look at who else has done it and model their success. Even bring on people as guests on your shows to say, hey, how would you recommend promoting a podcast right now?
Fire.
Right?
Fire.
I just did the 10 pillars of how to grow a podcast not long ago with my girlfriend. She has a new show. This is all very, very, the 10-point plan to kickstart and grow your podcast. And we literally will do all of it for you. I feel like that would be super valuable, especially right now. I think podcasts are kind of like, Kevin said this on an interview yesterday. Podcasts now are kind of like what YouTube was, 5-10 years ago. It's a lot of people are trying to start them, and it's a lot more than people realize out of the gate. And I think this is probably where we should niche down, at least on the short-term business model, and then the long-term would be obviously Next Level You. So, fire.
Thank you as always, Evan. You are the man, the myth, the legend. We appreciate you.
So next time, I want to know what the business model is for the podcast. Like how much do ads pay? What's the growth model? Because I want you to be able to go to a Peter or somebody else, right? An Evan Carmichael, Dave Meltzer, and say, this is what we think we can do. And we want to get you to making 5-10K a month just in ads off your podcast, and we'll help make that happen. Because you went to Peter and said that, I think it's much easier. Yes, it's a much easier conversation than just, you should start a podcast because everybody's starting a podcast and we can help.
Right.
Okay.
So really buckling down there on that clarity, and then that funds everything. Then if Alan wants to keep doing coaching, great. And if he doesn't, great. Like Alan's in charge of building Next Level You.
Right.
And Kevin, you are too, right? But I mean, like that gives you guys the runway to then focus on building what you want to build, and not having to do $250 calls or $100 calls or whatever, right? Like keep whatever you want to keep because you enjoy it, but not having to make that the primary revenue driver to fund the growth of this business.
Right. So short-term profitability and then long-term growth of Next Level You, and those feed each other. But mostly focus on the profitability short-term. Have Kevin, or we'll divide and conquer on that. So the homework was 3 things. What were they?
Ads, figuring out ad rev.
Yep.
I want you to do ad revenue, and I want you to know how do you hyper growth a podcast. Like those are the 2 main things.
Okay. Thank you so much. We really appreciate this.
Yes. Thank you.
Let's go, guys. Make it
Much
happen.
love.
The Next Level Guys. It's happening. I'm gonna keep calling you guys the Next Level Guys. That's it.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Much love.
Thank you, man.
Talk to you soon.
If you want to see another awesome one-on-one I did with an entrepreneur just like you, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.